Purpose Highway is a space for discussions that drive connections toward people's highest purpose to build a better self and a better world. Join me for Season 1, where I start to uncover stories of entrepreneurs and thinkers that are making an impact. I'm your host, Scott Mason, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everybody. It's Scott Mason, revving up for another race down the Purpose Highway. And sitting with me in the front seat today is Scott Harris. Scott, you are a holistic life coach and fitness warrior with a special focus on defying age and recapturing youthful spirit. You're also the host of the Hero in Progress podcast, which lends itself to some of the things we're going to be talking about today. Scott, welcome to the show. It is so good to have you here.
I am extremely excited to be here. As I mentioned to you earlier, it's nice to be on the other side of the interviewee situation. So it's kind of nice to just kind of sit back here and take part in your show. It's awesome.
Totally enjoy the spotlight being all on you. Scott, let's just roll up our sleeves and press that pedal down and just go right down the highway. What to you is a hero? What are the characteristics that define a hero?
I think, in a nutshell, a hero is someone who is of service and sacrifice. I think a hero in real life is someone who is courageous enough to go within themselves. You know, I think a lot of times in life, we get really busy doing a lot of different things and we get caught up in our own, it's called life, right? And I think that it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of work to do the inner stuff. So to me, I like to call it, people call it the authentic self. Some people call it, the higher self. I like to call it the heroic self. So it's essentially, to me, the core of it though, is that a hero is someone who is of service and sacrifice for the greater good.
What is a warrior?
Well, when I think of a warrior as opposed to a hero, I like to think of a warrior as just someone who fights the inner battles. When I think of a warrior, sometimes I think of my clients. I think of, there's these moments when I have clients when they're training. And they can go one of two ways, right? And it's that moment where it's like, oh, this is so difficult. This is so hard. I can't. And then every so often a switch goes off. They're like, yes, I can. That's the warrior. That's the warrior within, is that it's that moment and that recognition. Cause a lot of times, I'm telling you right now, from my experience with clients, most of it is mental. It's not physical. It's the stories that we keep telling ourselves that we can't, we're not good enough. And I mean, I've been guilty of it many times in my life. I still struggle with that sometimes in my own life, but it's having that ability. That warrior is that part of you inside that's a fighter and that is willing to rise to the occasion or rise to the challenge.
You talk a lot about the inner battle. Explain a little bit more what that means. And is that a battle you personally have ever had to fight?
Oh, I've fought many, many inner battles. I'm trying to think of probably the best indication. Like, first of all, I guess, the inner battle, I think, it's all those things that we've accumulated since we were a child, since we were a kid. We've been told to live a certain way and we kind of get stuck in these patterns, right? So that inner, I'm trying to think now. I think the best way to go about it is to tell my main story of like an inner battle, right? I never thought I was going to be a fitness coach ever. I was a $102 soaking wet with a brick in my hand. As a kid, I got bullied on the schoolyard. I was shorter than the girls. There was one instance where I remember in class they were getting our shoe size for a skiing trip, And I had small feet. I had smaller feet than the girls, right? And as soon as I said my shoe size, everyone in the class starts laughing. I remember just crying because it's like when you have a room full of students laughing at you, excuse me, that's a difficult thing to go through. So, I mean, I was kind of like the skinny weakling growing up, never thought I'd be a fitness coach, and I was a drama nerd. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to do the screenwriting thing, which I did do for a while. And as I got older, what happened was I hit about, early 30s, and my mom got really sick with cancer. And it was that process that was kind of started what I would say was my inner awakening, where I started to realize that there just seemed to be a lot more to life than what was going on, what meets the eye. And it was that was the moment where I decided I wanted to take not just better care of my health physically, but mentally and emotionally. And I started to kind of sift back into my past. And after my mom had passed away, certainly that was a big turning point for me in terms of the best way I can describe it is, and my parents did a fantastic job raising me, like God bless them, but we all have our own shit, right? And I feel like a lot of, some of their beliefs and some of their stuff was kind of imposed on me as a kid. So really, I feel like that inner battle is when we're born as babies. I use this as an example. When we're born as babies, we're pure consciousness. We're untainted. Nothing has ever happened to us. And then, of course, parents, society, all these things kind of come together and shape who we are without us even really knowing it. So I think that inner battle is when you go back to yourself. You go back to that person that you were as a kid. And I really believe we still all have that inner kid, no matter how old you get. So, but I would say again, my inner battle came about from external forces that really forced me to change. Seeing what my mom went through was the best and the worst day of my life.
We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But I want to talk a little bit more deeply about something that you said. It's something I can personally relate to. It's something that impacts lives in a way that I don't think is discussed a lot. But I think it potentially has a huge traumatic impact on those who endure it in their lives. And it's men mostly that face this. And that is the experience of being small and thin. To me, I was very, very thin. I was probably 150 pounds at 6'1" when I was in high school. And it's hard to describe how traumatic that was for me. There was a constant feeling of vulnerability and inferiority about who and what I was as a man because of that. You're talking about, for instance, your shoe size being smaller than that of females. There were women that they might not have had my physical height, but they were physically stronger than me. And it impacted my identity. It also made me a target for bullies. You're talking about people laughing at you. Is it just me that had this association of being physically slim, really slim, skinny, as a boy, having this outsized impact on my life and my view of myself as a male? Can you relate to that at all? And can any of your clients relate to that?
It's rare that I get a client in the situation that I was in, but I do think it's a very common thing that's out there, and I think it is forgotten. And I know for myself, I don't know for you from experience, but I did struggle with that mightily when I was younger. The idea of that I wasn't man enough because I was so, like, I looked like a weakling, right? Like I was, Scott, I was skin and bone when I was 18. Like I was like a, like just a skinny little toothpick, right? So, yeah. And it did affect my confidence with a lot of things. It affected my confidence with girls, with women. And to be honest, I remember my first time going to the gym. I was in my early 20s, and I think I just kind of realized that I didn't want to appear that way anymore. So I focused on getting bigger. And I did that for quite a few years. I got obsessed with bodybuilding, and I got really obsessed with putting on weight. And I mean, I think I was probably about 118 pounds or something crazy when I was at my skinniest. And now I weigh 165. And that's the heaviest I've ever weighed. But the interesting thing that happened was, and again, it kind of ties back in a bit to the inner battle, is that I realized that, and I'm sure people who struggle with being overweight feel this too, but I would look in the mirror and I would, no matter what, I would still see the skinny guy.
Yeah.
I'd still see that skinny weakling. My muscles were never big enough. I was never going to look good enough. And that affected my relationships. It affected the way I viewed life, and it took the inner work to just finally accept my body for where it's at and appreciate it on a different level. It's not to say I never look in the mirror anymore and still have that thought of like, oh, I wish I was a little bit this or a little bit that. I think it's a difficult one for us to completely get rid of, but I think it's building the awareness around that when we look in the mirror and how we feel. And I think I finally got myself to a point where I accepted my body for where it is, and that it's okay. Sometimes I'm going to be a little skinnier. Sometimes I'm going to have a little more muscle. Sometimes I'm going to be a little healthier. Sometimes I'm going to fall off the nutrition wagon a little bit. And I think it's okay. And I think that's something I also try to teach my clients is we need to find a way to really love ourselves. And I don't mean that in like an egotistical, cocky kind of way. But I do think a lot of us struggle with there's a lot of body image and self-image or imposter syndrome and things like that. But yeah. I see it. It's hard, Scott. I love working with my clients. I love them to pieces. And I can't climb inside of their head and make them do what they need to do. And I've seen so many great success stories, and I've seen many failure stories. And it always breaks my heart when I see people struggle with the things that I've struggled with body image and things like that. And it really is just about learning to accept yourself and get to that spot where you're comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll never forget the first time I actually went to the gym. People openly laughed. And it took a huge amount of courage for me to even walk through those doors. That's something I personally can really relate to. The first step to make a change. I got tired of being that skinny. And so, as presumably you did too, decided to do something about it. You mentioned that a few minutes ago. But it was very, very hard. Did you have someone that you worked with, or did you have a mentor? Did you have anyone who said, you've got to do this? In my case, for instance, someone threatened, basically, said that, you're so skinny and weak, I could kill you. And I was just like, oh my God, I've got to do something about this. And so that's what drove me into the gym to take this more seriously. Was there any singular incident like that with you, or?
For me, I was doing, in my early 20s, I was actually doing a lot of drugs. Like I was like doing like acid, smoking a lot of weed. And a lot of it was just to mask a lot of what I was feeling, I think, and a lot of what I was going through. But I did have this one really bad trip, essentially, where I remember looking at myself in the mirror and just everything was accentuated. How unhealthy I looked, how skinny I looked. And that was a huge moment. I think I even remember, so I was, really high on acid, and I had this apple, and I remember just looking at this apple and seeing just how healthy it was, like just an apple. And I remember thinking, I need more of this. I need to start taking care of myself. And when I first went to the gym, I didn't have a mentor or anything like that. I think I went with a buddy of mine. He's a black belt in judo. I met him when I was 19. We're still friends, and we would go to the local gym, and I was really intimidated for sure. But I fortunately don't recall feeling, I didn't get laughed at or anything like that. But I think I got some looks and some stares, but I think it just motivated me to keep training. And then, as you know, once you start to see some results, it motivates you even more. So unfortunately at the time, I didn't really have a mentor that took me under their wing. I certainly have had mentors over the years for fitness, absolutely 100%. But at the very beginning, actually, it was, I think my training regime was lifting weights 4 days a week, doing different muscle groups and eating a lot of pasta. I remember just because I was like, I'm skinny. I need to eat lots of food. And I was just eating and eating and eating. So,
Well,
yeah.
did the pasta work? That's what I want to know.
It actually did. I mean, for me at the time, I don't know. I just started eating a lot more than what I was used to. And then obviously I was doing the protein and things like that, like smoothies. But, it was a process of a few years before I got myself up to a weight that I was more comfortable in.
And so professionally, what were you doing at the time?
I was acting at the time. I was just coming out of theater school actually when a lot of that was happening. And so I spent the majority of my 20s and early 30s doing the whole trying really hard to be the next Brad Pitt or the next Tom Cruise and was pursuing acting. And I did a lot of screenwriting, and it really was my mom's illness that changed that. That's where I realized that the acting wasn't quite enough for me. I still love it even to this day, and I did it on and off for a few years after that, but something just clicked in me when that whole thing went down.
Talk to me about that.
I remember the first call I got from her. I could hear something in her voice, and she basically just said, "Hey, I've got something to tell you." And I said, "What's that?" She's like, "I have cancer." It's a weird moment because immediately, I'm not trying to be negative, but you think, "Oh my God, like this is the beginning of the end." Like that's the way cancer works most of the time. And she fought for about, I want to say it was a good 2 years.
Can I ask what kind of cancer she had?
She had ovarian. And then it just spread, right? And she, Scott, I learned so much from that experience right up until the point she died. That's why I said earlier, her passing was the best and worst day. The worst day, it's obvious. It's my mother. It's the person who gave birth to me, the person who knows me best. But the best day, the reason I say that is because I'm able to say that years later, looking back, because of all the lessons I learned. I wouldn't be the guy I am sitting here now. I've thought, what would it be like if she were still alive? What kind of guy would I be? And that's just bizarre to me. It's like an alternate reality or an alternate timeline. But the day she passed, I remember I was with my dad, and we used to go to IHOP. We used to get like IHOP pancakes. That was kind of our jam for a while. We'd go and
I love me some IHOP pancakes.
Yeah, we were going for some IHOP. Yes. And my sisters were at the hospital. We knew the end was near. I had been there the night before visiting, and my sisters called and they were like, yeah, the doctors have said like she's going to go within the next 3 hours, say like 3-4 hours. I'm sitting there at IHOP, and my dad looks across the table at me and he's like, do you want to go? The weirdest thing is, Scott, for a second, I thought about not going. I thought about, am I supposed to go? I know that sounds crazy, but I'm like, do I go? Do I watch her die? What do I do? And I remember just saying to my dad, I'm like, finally, I was like, yeah, we got to go. Let's go. So we took the bus down to the hospital, and we all got to kind of spend some last moments with her. But I think there's two really big lessons I got from my mom passing away. And obviously watching her take her final breaths is the first one. In the movies, as you know, I love movies, you see a lot of people that pass away. It's always so beautiful, and it's always so like, I'm now going to, right? She didn't go very peacefully. My mom held a lot of grudges, and she was quite a negative person, actually. For the remainder of her years, she was hanging on to a lot of stuff. So physically, when she was taking her final breath, she was like reaching for the bed, grabbing on tight, and you could see her physically fighting to stay. And there was this battle going on. And I remember in that moment thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm not going to let myself get to that point in my life. Like, I'm not going to have the same struggles as she did. And it was time for me to just change my life. And it wasn't to say that I was a failure up to that point, but I just wasn't living with the right amount of purpose. And then that's when right after she passed away, I got into massage therapy for a while. From massage therapy, I got into the personal training. And then from the personal training, I got into this, moving online with holistic life coaching. And I think in this life, in this journey that we're on, we're all learning a ton of different lessons along the way. And it's our job to, again, do that inner work and sift through some of the things that are holding us back. And I don't know, when I saw my mom go, I was like, I don't want to be, when it's my time, I don't want to have any regrets. And I certainly don't want to hold any grudges. And I want to feel like I've lived more positively and more optimistically. I mean, obviously, I'm not ideal, I'm not perfect. And some days I do struggle a lot. But that whole incident just really, really shaped and defined how I see everything. And just watching someone go in that fashion, I remember right after it happened, it felt like a truck had run me over. I was sitting in the waiting room afterwards, or the lounge area, and my body's never felt that heavy. I can't even describe it. It was just like, I remember the nurse coming in asking about whether they could take her corneas, like for donation. And then my whole family, for some reason, looked at me for that answer. And I'm like, oh God, I don't. And I remember saying, you know what? Don't do it. Cause she never said anything about her donating her corneas. And plus, I don't feel like having a nightmare in 3 weeks where my dead mother visits me and curses me for giving away her corneas. Like that's what literally went through my mind. So I'm like, I don't want to be tormented with nightmares about my mom, like freaking out because
you wake up and there's an angry ghost at the foot of your bed.
Yeah. How dare you give them my corneas? And my mom was a stubborn woman, so if anyone's going to haunt me, she would do it. I'll tell you that right now. So, yeah.
To be clear, though, and I don't want to dwell on the morbid, but I really want to just make sure that we understand, do you feel that as your mother was physically attempting to hold on to her life, that it was somehow related to or driven by the desire to hold on to some of the grudges or some of the hostilities that she might not have been able to resolve? And is that related to your own reaction to it? Or is there something that I'm not understanding that we're not understanding? Just so that your narrative is clear and we understand why and how your journey went the way it did.
I think, she was hanging on because of the grudges. I think that she was scared to leave us behind as well. I know she'd verbalized that a lot, that she didn't want to leave her kids behind. And, so I think that was a huge part of it for her. And I think for me, my sisters were actually, I have two older sisters, and for them, they found it very traumatizing, like for quite a few years, and they were seeing it in a different light than I was, I think. And for me, I was really trying to see the positives of it, and I looked at it as my mom saw me into this world, I'm going to see her out. And I think she taught me life's greatest lesson, which is that of death. And I feel, to be honest, Scott, I think a lot of my work, the hero's journey, the idea of recapturing your inner spirit, your inner kid, all comes down to, in order to embrace life, we have to embrace death. I think so often the topic itself, people get freaked out. It's the big D word. And I'll tell you, I contemplate my death almost every day since that happened. And when I say contemplate, I don't mean I get up and I devote an hour and strictly think about it, but I ponder my mortality every single day, because that is what drives me to be a better person. And it's a reminder that I'm here for a very short period of time and I want to live my life to the fullest. So I really think that's the lesson I took from it and how it really shaped Hero in Progress and just the concept of leveling up ourselves on a continual basis. It's never ending. Hence Hero in Progress.
You said that you moved into massage. shortly after your mother's passing as a way to begin to move into a more intentional and purposeful life. Talk to me a little bit about how you experienced that mental shift and how it manifested itself through your journey.
The interesting thing when I went into massage work, at the time, I didn't really think about it, but I realized why I was going down that path. I signed up for this massage school. It was a 1-year program around the time my mom was sick. And after she died was when the schooling started. And the interesting thing was I was in the best place to heal because 99% of my classmates were all women. So I was missing a mother. Now I had a girlfriend at the time who was extremely supportive and fantastic. But she was also taking on, I think, a little too much of the load. And so what I found myself in was this massage school where it's all about healing your body. It's all about doing massage work. It's about touch. It's about connection. And I was surrounded by all these women, sort of like all these motherly figures. And it was an amazing experience. I only did massage for a couple of years. And I think the reason, again, as part of my journey, the purpose of that was not just to learn a new skill and maybe start a new career, but I think it was healing. I was there to heal. And when I look back on that chapter and that part of my journey, I'm so grateful for that. I'm like, man, I was in the right place at the right time for that because that's exactly what I needed. Then when I got out of I started working massage a few different places. I lived in Tofino for a while and I went to Steve Nash Sports Club downtown here in Vancouver, BC. And that's when I started meeting with personal trainers and I started to think, hey, if I combine personal training with massage, this is a great combo. I'm going to do this. And what ended up happening is I ended up not doing massage ever again. And I fell in love with doing the fitness side of it and then now more into the life coaching side of it. But yeah, I would say like for the massage part was really, it's interesting. Like, I think we don't realize that a lot of times as things are happening to us, we don't see the purpose until later. And that was just one of those things when I look back and I'm like, it makes a lot of sense why I was drawn to that, why I wanted to do the massage. I wanted to connect that. And actually a side note, when my mom was really sick, obviously her head was like shaved from all the chemo. And I remember I'd go and visit her, and one of her favorite things was I would just sit at the edge of the bed and I'd give her like a scalp massage and a head massage. And it just brought her so much peace for that period of time when she was going through so much pain. And I remember even one time coming over and she says, "Oh, did your sisters tell you about my new routine?" And I said, "No, what's that?" She's like, "Well, I get them to do the scalp massage too." So she was, yeah. My sisters were a lot more present during that time than I was. That might be one regret I have, but that was one of the things I did do for my mom when I visited, and that also led into the massage.
So there are a lot of personal trainers in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of them here in New York City alone. One of the things that I thought was interesting about you, though, was that your approach to physical training was, as we mentioned earlier, and as you referenced a few seconds ago, more holistic. People regularly associate being a warrior or being a hero with feats of physical strength. Personal training, at first blush, might seem like an opportunity to help people become that physical hero. But you talk about two other things. First of all, you talk and describe yourself as a holistic coach. So when I hear that, I think about someone who's much more concerned with physical training as part of a package of health. But then you also talk specifically about brain health. Let's talk for a minute about physical coaching, physical health, being a physical warrior within a larger holistic context. But hold on to the thought about the role of the brain. talk to me a little bit about holistic health. What exactly does that mean?
Holistic health is the journey. Again, I think it's the journey back to yourself. I think that I've learned, and it goes back to what we were talking about with the skinny stuff and the body image, is that's why brain health and that's why the inner work is so important, because you'll never be satisfied with yourself if you're only focusing on the external. And in the fitness industry, there's a lot of good trainers. There's a lot of really bad trainers. There's a lot of so-so trainers. And I personally think I'd like to see a future where there really isn't such thing as a personal trainer that just works with fitness alone. Because I don't think fitness alone is going to get you where you ultimately need to go.
Why?
Because the mind is, in my opinion, is the strongest. That's what's going to elevate you or cause you to regress. You can have all the best intentions in the world to get in the best shape of your life, but if you haven't done the internal work first, I've seen it with so many clients, it will not happen. It's like why you see so many people that go on a crash diet for 6 weeks. They might lose that weight in 6 weeks, but 99% of the time they're back to their old habits and they put the weight back on, or they never get the weight off at all. And I think it's approaching it from that holistic angle. It's so important to find out what's going on with that person as a whole picture, not just as an outer strength. And I've realized over the last couple of years, as I've made that shift, how important it is to work on that mindset. Like, what is going on? And like brain health is, I'll give you a quick example. Like right now, I'm on a social media detox. I haven't been on social media for over a week. And it's hard because of my business, but I'm doing this as an experiment. And it's for my mental health.
It's a heroic journey in of itself.
Yeah. And again, it's practice what you preach, but it's that, as I'm developing my coaching, I've just realized that a lot of these things in society, it's normal, right? We check our Facebook, we check our Instagram, we go on YouTube. But I think we really need to start really paying attention to how much we are consuming these things and getting back to proper connection, not just with other people, but with ourselves. So I've had an interesting week because all of a sudden I've realized I never thought I was addicted. And certainly compared to most people, I'm probably pretty good. I'm not a huge social media person to begin with other than business. But that being said, Scott, I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many times I'm just sitting in a room going, like I had a break between clients at the studio yesterday and I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I'm not allowed to go on social media. What do I do? Like I can't look at things. What do I do? And honestly, sometimes I read, sometimes I meditate again, but it's just, to me, it's about, that's just one aspect of the many habits that we can adopt to strengthen our mindset. And I think it's important to strengthen the mind along with the body, because eventually the mind is going to win out. That's, I think, the main point I'm trying to drive home is that, and I've seen it with so many clients, best intentions and personal training when they sign up can seem so new and exciting, but it's around week 6. That's when the challenge hits. That's when they're going to want to revert back to their old ways if they're not careful.
Why? What happens at that point?
Oh, for everybody, it's different. I think it's hard to pinpoint it as one thing. I think for most people, it gets hard when it's new. At the beginning, they want to make this change, and it's brand new. And let's say too, if they're not getting the results they want, they get discouraged. That's one thing that might cause them to fall off a little bit. But I'll give you a really quick example. His name was Scott. He's an awesome guy, awesome client. He came on, he trained with me for 6 weeks. We did about 20 hours of training. This guy's work ethic at the studio was through the roof, and he's quite overweight and he wants to lose weight for his son. And I mean, I pushed him pretty good, some workouts. And the thing I could see with him though, was there was this deeper self-belief that he couldn't do it or he wouldn't make it. So I was constantly hammering home all that. Like, I always try and tell my clients, I'm like, if you fail, just don't beat yourself up. Just take a deep breath, accept that it's happened, learn from that, and then move on. I think sometimes we tend to, and a lot of times with my clients, it's like we make that mistake. We miss that workout. We eat that extra pizza and it all goes to hell. Cause we again, but it's that self-love thing. Like it's that inner work that's not happening. So this particular client, it started with his work started to get busier. They changed his schedule. And he canceled once, very last minute, because his son had a dentist appointment. And you know what? When people send me those things, I'm like, might be true, might be a dentist appointment. But I'm telling you, Scott, a lot of times it's not. And they're looking for that way out. There's a fear thing that starts to happen. Change scares the crap out of me too sometimes. I think with my clients, what happens is, sometimes it gets challenging for them. And in his case, I don't doubt his work was really challenging for him. And I think he was going through something, but I sent him some messages. I did the best I could to try and get him back in. And his last session, he did a no-show, and he's like, "Oh, I hate wasting your time." And I could kind of sense he was slipping into this sort of self-negative talk. And I was like, "Dude, shake it off. Work with what you got right now. If we can only get you in for one training session, let's do it." And it's hard when those things happen. I'll be honest. I take on a lot with my clients in that sense. And it's hard to watch that happen. And I've seen it, and it's hard not to take it personally, but
if I am starting with a physical trainer of my own, or I've started taking classes, and that 6-week period is looming, and I'm beginning to feel like that dental appointment, it just really seems urgent right now. What would you tell me to do to avoid falling into that slump?
I would say the first thing to avoid that slump is what I sort of just mentioned, is go easy on yourself. In the sense, like, it's natural for you to feel that way. It's totally dude, I've been doing this. I've been personal training and doing training for 10 years. And trust me, I've had stretches where my mental brain is convincing me not to work out or get lazy. And I think it's just a matter of, I would just say, you have to stay the course, and I would dive a little deeper into maybe a deeper why, or a deeper reason why you're feeling that way underneath that surface of why that's coming up. And maybe possibly on a less deeper level, it might just be you need to switch something up. You need to switch something up in your routine. Maybe something feels stagnant now after 6 weeks, which is why when I train my clients, I try to switch it up as much as possible. And that's why I say around that 6-week mark, it gets a little bit more boring. They've been doing it for a while. And even if they're getting some minimal results, we're always so tempted to eat the crappy food. It tastes good. And I think it's just, it takes perseverance and resilience to really stay committed to your health. It is, for some people, it's easy, I think, or I wouldn't say easy, but it's a little bit more smooth sailing, because a lot of the fitness trainers, they love fitness. And I always make the joke. I'm like, I hate it as much as my clients. I don't like working out. If I didn't have to do it, dude, I wouldn't do it. Honestly, like, I don't love it that much, but I do it because I know it's good for me. It's good for my health. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a whole other side note, but I think some trainers, that's also the issue sometimes, is that they forget that their clients are human, and they're not setting out to be the next personal trainer or the next fitness fanatic. At the end of the day, most people, Scott, they want to feel better. They might want to look better too. I get it. But it's essentially, we just want to feel better about ourselves.
What would you tell me if I were one of these individuals that have attempted to feel better? I've worked with trainers, I've taken classes, I've gone to the dojo, I've gone to the gym, I've gone to the dance studio. I just, life always just creeps up on me. I just want to have my life not be so hard that way. Or I just feel like this sort of stuff just doesn't work for me. Now you're telling me that this may actually be not because of life or something or another, but a mental block. Well, what do I do with that? What would you say to a client like that or an individual like that?
I think the first and most important thing to address is a lot of people don't like going to the gym. They might not like lifting weights. They might not like running. But it really is about at least finding some form of physical activity that does light you up, does get you a bit excited. It's like, if you hate running, don't run. Like, I'm not going to prescribe my client to go and do that. We have to find things, and maybe it's hiking, maybe it's speed walking. I don't know. It could be anything. And then sometimes we have to do the things we don't enjoy a little bit in order to get where we need to go. But essentially, the first thing is trying to even make fitness fun in which way that's possible for that person. And it's a challenge because, like I said, like, nobody likes coming in the studio and doing, burpees and squats, and it's not the most fun thing in the world. But again, it's, I would remind people to, when that kind of stuff is happening, is remember your why. Like with that client I mentioned, I kept telling him, like, you're doing this for your son. But here's the interesting thing. He's doing it for his son. But even as I'm saying this to you in this moment, he needs to do it for himself first. Like, he needs to be able to, I mean, that's the interesting thing. There's a lot of external whys, but at the end of the day, you really need to want to do that for yourself. And I think that, I think it's a tricky thing, but I think when that lack of motivation is coming in, and when there's that struggle, that's when we're being tested. And I tell my clients in those moments, I'm like, it's sort of similar to the hero's journey. It's like your innermost cave, right? It's the ordeal. And the only way out, if you've heard this 100 times, the only way out is through. And if nothing's working for you, we need to find anything, even just a little something that does work. And maybe with that client, I would suggest, don't try to overhaul too much. Just do tiny things at a time. Like, I'm big on, I don't know if you've ever read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. Highly recommend this book for anybody. It's a fantastic book about how you can just change your habits one little step at a time. Like, if you hate going to the gym, he talks about, for instance, just simply, like, you could do a habit stack. So for instance, a habit stack is like, every time I go to the washroom, I do 20 squats. Like, it's just 20 squats. When I'm waiting for my coffee to brew in the morning, if you drink coffee, when I'm waiting for my coffee to brew, I do 10 push-ups. And at least you're getting your body moving, and you're starting to incorporate some better habits. And I heard one story he tells in the book about a guy that would literally, the first step was, just have your gym clothes out and go to the gym for 5 minutes. That's your commitment. So this guy literally went to the gym for 5 minutes only, and then he'd go home. Once that habit was ingrained, he was like, well, I'm going for 5 minutes. I may as well stay longer. All of a sudden, the gym sessions got longer, but this dude got in really good shape. So I think sometimes what happens as human beings is, and again, we're in such what's that term? Not quick fix, but instant gratification, right? We want instant gratification. So that's why, again, at week 6, it's such a struggle, because we're not getting that instant gratification we're expecting. And the reality is, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of patience. It's patience with yourself. And I think in that situation, it really is just change. I'm telling you right now, if anybody's struggling with that, it's just change one thing. Don't put pressure on yourself. Like, I gotta quit drinking pop. I gotta quit this, stop that. Just take one thing that you want to change, and change that first.
Let's get back to the topic of brain health, by the way. I don't want to drop that. I mentioned it previously briefly. I have heard people say, I'm focusing on my mind, not my body. Or my body, there's nothing wrong with me prioritizing my mind over my body. What would you say to that?
For somebody who's prioritizing their mind over body?
Yeah. Because part of what you talk about, and I saw that on your Instagram page, was that your focus isn't just on physical health, but on brain health. And you talk a lot, for instance, about and have some knowledge and work with your clients, it looks like, on sleep habits and things like that. Talk a little bit more about that.
First and foremost, I believe you need both physical and mental. I would say, I almost want to say the mental is more important because it is truly the driving force. But as you mentioned, you need both. It's the yin yang. It's both sides of the same coin, right? But I can't stress enough, like, even from experience, I went through a stage where I became so hyper focused on the mental side of my journey. And I think I needed that for a while. And I became very focused on my meditation. I was working out less. And the thing that happens is eventually there's an imbalance. Personally, from my experience, I think it's okay to maybe take a break from the physical or take a break from the mental here and there, but you have to learn to understand yourself, know your own bullshit a little bit too, but you need to be able to just essentially, in a way, I like to think of myself as I try to coach my clients to be their own coach, to be able to understand themselves better. And I think that if you focus too much on the mental side of it, there's a danger in that as well. And as you mentioned, and I've noticed it, for instance, when you make the mind stronger, that's what's going to get you through those extra reps on the bench press, let's say, right? Because your brain is stronger. You're not going to be so like, oh, I'm not where I can't do it. Your mind, you've been strengthening your mind. Your mind is clear. You're going to push yourself harder, but it works on both sides of that, right? Like, I do believe that your physical health also helps the mental side of it. Because as you feel physically stronger and as you feel physically better, that goes to your brain. Like, I like the person I'm looking at in the mirror. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling stronger. So to me, they go hand in hand, which is why I focus on the holistic side of it. And which is why, as I mentioned earlier, trying to pinpoint the little habits first, start changing the little things. You are not going to reprogram somebody that has been unhealthy for a long time. That's, I think, people try to overhaul it too quickly. They don't. And that being said, balance is 100% on balance. And within each of those, especially the mental side of it, the mental side is not just meditation. It's not just breath work. The mental side of it is checking in with your relationships. Who are you surrounding yourself with? What kind of energies are you surrounding yourself with? Because that's going to affect you, right? I've seen many clients come to me. They try to work out really hard, but their spouse isn't supportive. Well, that's a huge problem if you don't have that support.
What do you tell those clients?
Oh,
and that's really tough.
It's a tough one. A lot of the times, the client is strong enough to silence that and push onward. But, I really don't have I'll be honest, it's a tough one because I usually just tell my clients you have to do what's best for you first and foremost. And if they're not going to support you, you might need to ask yourself, why am I in that relationship? I am not a relationship counselor. Let's be clear on that. But I think those are sometimes the questions we need to ask ourselves and it goes back, I mentioned with the social media, I always say, like, let's say I love this analogy, but imagine tomorrow morning you get up first thing and you check your Facebook feed and you go through the news feed, you read comments. I'm going to ask you this question. Tomorrow morning, if I told you or asked you, would you be willing to get up in the morning, step out of bed, and in your living room, there's 50 people all talking and saying a bunch of stuff about this going on in the world? Like, would you be cool with that? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
extrovert. I might enjoy it for about 2 seconds.
But but generally speaking, first thing in the morning, you don't want to.
Yeah.
You don't want to be getting up and into a room full of people and they're all talking about stuff. Like, you need to take that time for yourself. And I think
that's true. At least I'll have had my coffee.
Yeah, and I think what I mentioned too about being conscious is of it. Just be conscious. Like when you do go on your social media, like this is where the brain health comes in. Is what are you consuming? What are you watching for an hour? These things all matter, and I think that's why I'm doing the detox, because in order to cut it off completely, I'm now becoming aware of what I'm missing or what I'm addicted to or what I'm craving, and it's forcing me to ask some really good questions of myself. So I look forward. I'll go, and when I do go back, I feel like I'm going to be able to moderate it better. I'm not going to be quite as unconscious, because we've all done it. I mean, YouTube is my favorite, and YouTube is like the devil, because it's you watch one video and the next thing you know, 2 hours has gone by and you're like, oh my God.
Totally, especially if it's Scott Mason's Purpose Highway YouTube channel. You're going to watch 8 or 10 in a row. That's just what people do.
But here's the beauty. Here's the beauty about Scott Mason's Purpose Highway is that the one thing I've realized in this last week, because I'm not going on Instagram and I'm not going on Facebook, I've been back listening to podcasts more, right? I've been reading more. I've been doing different things. And I think what's important to understand, and I'm guilty of this big time, is that we're going to these platforms mostly for the dopamine and for some kind of instant feeling. When we deprive ourselves of that instant feeling, really interesting things start to happen. And I think we can learn a lot. And I think technology is amazing. I think social media can be a great way to connect. You and I connected through Facebook, right? So, I mean, it is a beautiful thing. But I think I just want people to start becoming more conscious of what they're consuming, how they're consuming it. It's kind of, I'll give you a really quick example. Imagine a client that comes to me that's battling weight. Okay, they're overweight, they're struggling, but they go on to Facebook.
Sure. And
they start going down this path where they see an article or they see a post from somebody who's extremely fit. Mm-hmm. And it makes them feel a certain way, because for somebody else it might be motivating, but for some people that might discourage them. So then from that post, they start reading comments, and then these comments, everything we've become so consumer heavy that we don't think about it anymore, Scott. Like, we don't think about it. I wasn't thinking about it. I was like, I'm going to do a social media detox. And I'm telling you, it was like, I felt like a drug addict for the first 24 hours. I was like, what do I do? And I consider myself a pretty smart, savvy individual, but even I was like, wow, I'm a little addicted to this stuff. But now I've done it for a week, and there's this kind of period now where it's starting to feel very easy, and I almost don't want to go back. Like I call it like I've reclaimed my mental real estate. It's not being attacked by too much stimulus, which again, in turn, I think that's also what tires us out and stresses us out. Information overload. Mm-hmm. So we're in an uphill battle with this stuff, I think, but I think a lot of people are starting to kind of realize some of the downfalls. I mean, I don't know if did you see the documentary Social Dilemma?
Talk to us about it.
Great. It's on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, watch it. But basically it dives into this stuff. The algorithms that these companies use to basically control you. I mean, it's to keep you entertained and to keep you fixed. That's what they want. And I kind of was aware of it, but then when I saw that documentary, I was amazed, because I'd be on YouTube. Here's a perfect example. This is how much they got us, man. This is how much they own our ass. So imagine, like, I want to shop. I was telling you I want to get a new laptop. So let's say I Google new Apple MacBook something price, blah, blah, blah. So I Google search it, comes up. I leave it alone. Now, later on, I decide I'm going to go on to YouTube, watch some videos. Yep. And all of a sudden, there's an ad for an Apple computer. Yep. And it's like,
We've all seen it happen. It's creepy.
Or there's even, I don't know if you've ever had this instance, but this has happened to me and it's happened to some of my clients, is that you won't even Google it. You'll talk about it. It's like the phone heard you, and you're like, I didn't Google search that, but why are there a bunch of things coming up for new juicers? Like, and it's kind of freaky, right? And I think that, it's, I mean, I'm going to be 48 this year. So I grew up in the 80s, right? Our video game console when we were a kid was the Atari 2600. And I've seen this progression of technology. And like I said, it's great if you can find a way to use it, but not let it use you. And I think, or oddly enough, not let it consume you.
Yeah.
Right. There's a good way to look at it. And I think the more we're able to get aware of this stuff, the better. And I'm not saying don't ever do it. Like you have to, do what I did, do a week. But I do challenge everyone. Try 24 hours and see what happens. The first day I did it, I automatically clicked the Facebook app 3 times without consciously thinking about it. Like I just clicked it. It started to load. And then I went, oh, wait, I'm on a detox.
Wow.
So it is happening. And I think that again, back to what you said, or what we've been talking about, mental, physical together is important. Your nutrition's important, and your nutrition, what you're eating affects both your mind, your brain, and your body. So nutrition is really important, right? So you have to have every aspect of it, and you have to feed each aspect. What I said earlier too about heroes and that are, to serve and to sacrifice. I think serving others is huge. Serving other people in whatever way you can is also going to improve your mental health. It makes you feel better. Do something nice for somebody. It feels good, but do something without expectation in return, because that's a big one too. Mm-hmm. Don't post it on Facebook like, hey, look what I did. Like that's right. Like, look how much money I donated. Do it quietly, man. It's all good. But I think these are the things. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Sort of like the celebrities that donate money for the parks and then make sure that their names are there. So see the good deed that they've done.
And it's like, I get it, but at the same time, at least just once in a while, try and do it without saying anything. Just go and do it. Go donate whatever. And the only people that need to know is you, the person or the people you did it for. That's it. There's something about being selfless that's a beautiful thing.
We could talk all afternoon. It's been a blast talking to you. I've got to say, you mentioned in passing that you're 48. People who are watching this video will probably have the similar reaction that I did, which is, dude, show us how to do that.
It's the
you look fantastic.
It's the Captain America soldier serum. That's what it is. No. I look after myself for sure. That's a huge part of it, but I will not lie. I think I was blessed with some very good genes. My dad's in his 80s. He looks amazing. And my mom, before she got sick, she passed away at 65, but she looked really good for her age. And if she was still here, God bless her soul, she'd probably look young too. So it's a bit of family genes, but I'm also doing the right things for sure.
Yeah. Folks are going to want to find out more about some of your online presence when they're not detoxing, where they can, places that they can find out more about you, some of the programs that you offer. Why don't you talk to us about that briefly and maybe share how they can connect with you once you, with intention, get back on social media?
Right. So my Instagram is it's Scott Harris. So that's a good place to start. Also, I have my podcast, which is Hero in Progress. It's on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's on all the major platforms, so they can check out that. If they're interested in coaching or reaching out, I can be found at my website, which is www.warriorwithintraining.com. And that's got all of my online coaching that I offer, as well as my personal training. I do in-person personal training here locally in New West, BC. And I would just say, check out the show. I got lots of cool stuff coming in. If anyone's a movie nerd and they want a different approach to their health and fitness, I do a show almost every Friday, Flashback Friday, where I go back and I do it's an episode where I take a coaching lesson. We go into a podcast time machine. I take a coaching lesson from one of the classic films, and we assess that and how you can kind of become a better person because of it. So I have a lot of fun doing that. That's a solo episode I do. So, I would encourage people to check that out.
I absolutely love it. Scott, it has been great taking a ride with you today. Thank you so much for joining us. And for everyone tuning in, if you like this episode, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review on Apple or a comment on YouTube. And I shall see you next time for another episode of Scott Mason's Purpose Highway. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Join our community today at purposehighway.com and subscribe to get notified when new episodes go live. Scott Mason, checking out.